The Real Estate Unsuccess Stories podcast features people from the real estate community sharing real stories about their struggles, pains, and even losses during their own real estate journey. We share these real experiences so you can learn from them and build a successful journey of your own. Now, here's your host, Cody Lewis, one of the managing partners at Vindu Capital, located in Charleston, South Carolina.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I'm so excited to have y'all back, but I'm even more excited for our guest today. He is the principal over at Cordell Capital, Mr. Charlie Wessel. Charlie, thanks for joining us today, sir. How are you?
Thanks for having me, Cody. We're good, man. We're good. Life is good, brother.
Man, that's awesome to hear. I really appreciate it. For those playing along at home, this is probably the shortest distance between two guests, or a guest and myself, that we've had on here. Charlie doesn't live too far away, but we are recording in different locations today. Charlie, for those that may be hearing your name, voice, and seeing your face for the first time, what's the origin story? Where are you from? How you got into real estate, and what you're really doing these days?
Yeah. Originally from Florence, South Carolina. Now living here in Charleston with my wonderful wife of 20 years. I got twin 8-year-old girls and a 12-year-old son. Yeah, we like to have a lot of fun. How I got started in real estate. I owned a general contracting firm for 10 years, sold it, and started another business, the roofing business. And I knew that, having rental houses wasn't going to do it. We had some rental houses before, and it just wasn't that much fun. I knew that, the multifamily game was the way to scale it up. And all the guys that I'd worked for in the past that, had a lot of money, they were all in commercial real estate. So I dove into it head first and studied the material and everything on how to invest, what a good deal looks like, this, that, and the other for the first year. And really just immersed myself into books and study courses that were available online. Then I got into my first deal by meeting people at a conference, and they were like, "Hey, you want to go raise some capital for this deal?" I said, "Absolutely." So that's now what we do, is we raise capital for good deals.
Well, listen, that's awesome. We always enjoy a good origin story, and it's always interesting, at least in my opinion, to hear how everyone came into it, because I think one of the most underpublished or talked about things is the background that people bring, and that you really, with some education, and it's a lot easier nowadays with YouTube and Bigger Pockets and all the different podcasts and books you can read, that you can educate yourself and get into this fairly quickly, right? And get a ton of education and learn from everyone else's success and failures. So I love a good origin story. So I appreciate you sharing yours. But like I was just saying, we brought you on to talk a little bit about struggles and challenges you've had in your career and some of the learns you've gotten out of those. So when, you're thinking through it and you're coming on the show, what popped in your head as far as struggles or challenges you've had in your career?
Well, I've got a couple of them, man, really. I mean, if you don't have struggles and challenges or haven't been through them, then you're not doing anything. I mean, we were I had two partners, and we were underwriting deals, for almost 2 years. Made it best and final on a handful of them, was awarded one deal. It was a pretty big deal. I think it was, 160 unit deal or something. And it fell apart in due diligence. At that point, I had almost had enough. And it was like, oh my God. I mean, the amount of time and money and effort we're spending and going to all these different properties for 2 years and not getting anything was it was insane. It was hard to break in, which is why I now raise capital for guys like you that go find deals.
Well, tell me, so you're touring all these properties, you're doing all this stuff, you're going at it for 2 years. You feel like you got, a fish on the line finally, and you're reeling it in, but it falls through during due diligence. Talk me through, and then our audience as well, what types of things would make a deal fall through in due diligence? And did you learn anything through that experience, or see anything in that due diligence period that you would now see ahead of time and you wouldn't have to wait till due diligence to find it?
Yeah, on this particular deal, it was polybutylene piping. And that was actually the case on a couple of deals that we had looked at. And it was going to be like $300 and something thousand to replace this polybutylene piping that was actively leaking. So, I mean, it wasn't like, oh, it's okay for now, but we may have to replace it in the future. Like, it needed to be replaced.
Like right now.
Like right now. Yeah. And I mean, they had actually tied in washouts that were PVC. So it looked like the property had PVC, but it did not. I mean, it was crazy. I'll be honest with you, it was crazy. And you find all kinds of stuff like this because, I mean, the old mom and pop shops that own, apartment complexes, I mean, they're just trying to do as little as possible so they can, I mean, they're living off that income. Most of them were living off the income from these apartment complexes, which is a damn good income. Really.
Yeah, it is. And they're making good money, but this is probably their only investment. This is their only property for most of them. And they live and die by, like you said, by the income produced by this property. So the least they can spend to make things work oftentimes, and unfortunately, are what gets done. And not to say that everyone's doing that, but there are a lot of people that have done that over time, especially on a lot of these older properties to your knowledge. So plumbing, sewage, that type of stuff, I would imagine now going through properties, or when you're looking at a sponsor to partner with, you want to make sure, and you're looking at these deals along with them, you want to make sure you're asking those questions, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And we did. We asked the question, and the broker said it was PVC, because if you look around, there's all these PVC washouts or cleanouts. And it wasn't that the owner was trying to be deceiving. That's how they had to make the repairs when they needed to make the repairs. When line got clogged, they had to dig it up, put a washout in, and it was PVC. So it wasn't that they were trying to be fraudulent or anything, but then that then falls back on the broker, and the broker even advertised it as PVC. So, I mean, it wasn't even an issue really, because, I mean, you see PVC and it's all good. You see terracotta pipe and that's no bueno.
You're right.
So, that or the polybutylene. There was another place that had copper piping, copper water lines from the 60s. And we found out every other month there were pinhole leaks in this copper that were just popping up left and right. So we'd had to go in and demo walls in all the units. I mean, it was a lot of stuff to go in and put PEX pipe in as opposed to the copper.
Right.
I mean, that was going to be another like $300,000 to go in and do all the demo on this stuff. And, I mean, it's big undertaking.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, that's one cutting into your availability to lease units as you're trying to do all this, but it cuts into a lot of the people that are existing living there. You gotta gut a lot of those things immediately and stop it and get it all at once. You can't really piecemeal a lot of that stuff together. I think that goes back to one of the things we keep hearing on this show: trust but verify.
Right.
Look at what the broker's sending you, talk to the owner, but verify what it is that's going on. And especially as you're talking about in some of these older buildings, or at least some of the older construction, you have to trust but verify, because some of the things may have just been missed over time. Maybe they forgot, or they hadn't really updated it and hadn't thought about it.
Right. And then you go in and try to retrade it for, drop $300,000 off the price.
Right.
And they're balking at that for sure. It's just, you really got to dive in and do your due diligence on it.
So when you're looking at things, after you've gone through a bunch of these different types of deals and doing all the due diligence, what are some common things that you like to look for in due diligence after you've done a bunch of them, seen a bunch of stuff? Top 2 or 3 things that you like to see or ask during due diligence, or even before due diligence, to really kind of feel out a property?
I tell you the truth is, just from being a general contractor over the years, I want to know how old the roof is. That's a large expense, replacing roofs, a big expense. So how old are the roofs? Piping, obviously, from our discussion. I like to see gutters on buildings because that helps save the foundations of these buildings. Check the foundations out as well. See if you see any major cracks going up through the brick, or if they're stucco, or, things like that.
Definitely make sure you're looking for horizontal cracks.
Yeah, absolutely. So just things like that. I mean, there's a whole laundry list of things, but those. So the major.
You have a general contractor background. You see this. You have a natural eye for these types of things. If there are folks out there that maybe don't, and you and I have talked about, I barely know the difference between the hammer and the nail. For those folks like me, should they partner with somebody, or should they find somebody they can really trust to help walk these properties with them if they're not as astute as your background and looking at these types of things?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's engineering firms that are out there, and it's well worth your money to hire them to walk through these properties to check everything. I mean, that's how we found out about all this stuff is, in due diligence, we're spending money on this stuff. I think that one unit that we got awarded, we lost like 10 grand in due diligence on it. Another one that we had that's not multifamily, it's actually flex space. And this is something that I just banged my head against the wall on this because I lost about 5 grand in due diligence on this. We did a phase 1 environmental report and everything on it. It was 33% smaller than advertised. And with flex space, you live or die by your square footage. It's rented out literally by the square foot.
Right.
It was 33% less square foot total than what the broker had advertised and told us.
So was he aware or not aware of something like this?
No, he was not aware because he was just going off of what the owner told him. And I was going off of what he told me because it's out of town. And even though I've been there and walked the property twice, I still didn't measure it. And that, this was my first flex space, property that we had looked at. And I'm a big fan of flex space. I think it's wonderful. There's so many small contractors and small businesses that need 3 to 4 offices up front and 1,000 square foot of warehouse in the back. It's an excellent property type, our asset class. But yeah, you got to measure the place, man. You got to measure it.
Well, yeah, and back to your point, and harkens back to what I mentioned earlier, trust but verify. But, when you're going in to these types of asset classes, especially if it's new or even out of town, like, have somebody you trust or you pay that will pay to help you do these types of things to walk through and check all the boxes on the property, because you're either going to pay for it up front and avoid mistakes on the back end, or you're going to spend way more on the back end because you didn't catch any mistakes up front about
Absolutely.
these types of things.
My advice into that whole realm is make sure that you pay for it. Don't take a free report. Pay for it. Because you're going to get what you pay for.
Well, and I would imagine it's probably you pay for something up front, you catch it, it'll save you 2, 3, sometimes 4 times what you paid up front for what it would have cost you if you had bought the property and didn't catch it. You know, like you were talking about some of the piping, you're talking about $300,000. I'm sure what you paid for in engineering and doing some of that due diligence was a fraction of the cost of what it would have cost to fix it if you didn't catch it.
Right. Yeah. It was like $6,500 for the engineering report, which is, to save us from having investors lose money or not making any money. That's huge. I'll pay $6,500 in a heartbeat, and I can lose my money. I can't lose their money.
Right. Yep. It's an important piece. Well, Charlie, I can't thank you enough. I think that's incredibly valuable information for our audience to listen to, and myself included. Like, you got to make sure you're trusting but verifying. If you don't have those resources yourself or have that experience from your previous background, pay to have somebody come in. And even if you do, pay somebody who's truly an expert to come and look at these things, because it'll save you a ton on the back end.
100%. 100%.
Well, Charlie, for those that want to partner with you, talk with you more, connect with you, where can they find you at on the interwebs?
On the interwebs, they can find us at Cordell Capital. It's CORDELL capital.com. And we're all over LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. So, reach out to us. We'd love to chat.
Perfect. Well, I will drop all those links for everyone in the show notes so you can quickly access them and get a hold of Charlie. He's a great guy to know, so I would highly recommend reaching out. Charlie, thanks again for joining the show. I truly appreciate it, sir.
Absolutely, Cody. Can't wait till our next meetup. We're going to grab a beer here soon, play some golf, man.
Hey, I'm dying for it. Let's do it. And thanks, everyone, for listening at home. We'll catch everyone next time.
You've been listening to the Real Estate Unsuccess Stories podcast with Cody Lewis. Be sure to subscribe today on your favorite podcasting platform so you can catch every episode of the Real Estate Unsuccess Stories podcast.